Deep in the heart of central Texas, there's a road that winds along Brushy Creek, a road where the past still whispers through the oaks and the pecans, and where the line between legend and reality blurs. This is Round Rock, a town that grew up on the edge of the Chisholm Trail, where cowboys once drove longhorn cattle north and where the wild frontier tested every man's courage. But with that history came something darker. Travelers began to tell of a figure lurking in the shadows, a towering, hair-covered man who haunted the creek bottoms and startled cattle along the trail. Some said he was a boy left behind from a wagon train, forced to survive in the wilderness until he became more beast than human. Others believe he was an outlaw who disappeared into the woods to escape the law, or perhaps something not human at all. The stories grew, and soon that stretch of Brushy Creek had a name: Hairy Man Road. Generations later, drivers still report seeing a shadow cross the road in their headlights, hearing screams in the night, or finding tracks too large to explain. A Texas legend was born, and it refuses to die. Tonight we open the case file on one of Central Texas' oldest and strangest mysteries, the Round Rock Hairy Man file. Welcome to Offroad X Files, where the trail meets the unknown. I'm your host, Jimmy Toungate. I'm excited to bring you Episode 2, the Round Rock Hairy Man file. I mentioned in the Genesis file that I'm from Central Texas, but tonight we're going to be talking about my hometown, Round Rock, Texas, a town with deep history, rugged frontier roots, and a haunting legend where, on the same trail that carried cowboys and cattle through Central Texas, a shadowy figure has lingered for generations. Locals call him the Hairy Man. Round Rock was founded in the mid-1800s and was originally known as Brushy Creek. The name was changed to Round Rock due to the large round rock that sits in the middle of the creek, which was used as a landmark for settlers' wagons and cattle drives. Today, when the creek is very low, you can still see those wagon ruts cut into the creek bed. The bustling town of Round Rock soon became a stopover point for pioneers, stagecoaches, and cattle drives because of the nearby Chisholm Trail, which would become one of the most famous cattle trails in America. The trail ran from South Texas up to Kansas and passed directly through the Round Rock area. It brought waves of cowboys, settlers, and drifters, as well as lawlessness. Round Rock wasn't just home to ghost stories and campfire legends, it was also the stage for one of the most famous outlaw shootouts in Texas history. On July 19, 1878, the outlaw Sam Bass, already infamous for robbing stagecoaches and trains, rode into Round Rock with his gang. They were planning on robbing the bank, but Texas Rangers had already been tipped off. Sheriff's Deputy A.W. Grimes confronted Bass and his men as they hung out near the store on Main Street. When Grimes asked if they were carrying guns, Bass's gang opened fire and Grimes was killed instantly, and then a running gun battle erupted through the streets as Texas Rangers joined in. Seaborn Barnes, one of Bass's men, was killed, and Bass himself was mortally wounded, shot in the hand and the chest. His partner Frank Jackson helped him escape the scene, but the next day lawmen found Bass barely alive under a tree. When asked the name of his accomplices, Bass reportedly said, "It's my cross and I'll bear it." But he died 2 days later on his 27th birthday. Today, Sam Bass is buried in the Round Rock Cemetery in an unmarked grave, just a short distance from where the legend of the Hairy Man has haunted Round Rock for generations. It makes you wonder, in a town where history and legend collide, could the restless spirit of an outlaw share the same woods as a shadowy figure known as the Hairy Man? The origin of the Hairy Man stories date back to the mid to late 1800s and speak of a wild, hair-covered man living along Brushy Creek near the Chisholm Trail. As with any good story, there's always variations and embellishments that are included with each telling of the tale. The most common version focuses on the story of a young boy who became separated from his wagon and his family on the Chisholm Trail. He was left behind in a storm and became lost. The boy survived by living off the land and grew up feral with his clothing long gone and eventually had shaggy hair covering his whole body. He feared strangers and defended his territory by scaring travelers and their livestock. He's also said to have swung from the trees and run his toenails along the tops of the canvas-covered wagons, creating sheer terror. Or was it simply tree branches rubbing on top of the wagons that scared wary travelers? I'll let you decide that. Other variations say he was an outlaw who hid in the woods to evade the law and became feral. This is a less common version, however, knowing the history of what happened with Sam Bass, who went hiding out in the woods, this could have some validity. Others believe he was something not human at all, a wild creature or a Bigfoot, more commonly known as a woolly booger or a booger man. We'll talk more about Central Texas woolly boogers later in this episode. Locals began calling the wooded road through Brushy Creek Hairy Man Road. Those traveling down the road claim to hear strange cries at night and sometimes see a towering, hair-covered figure in the trees who may or may not cross the road. I recently had the opportunity to drive down Hairy Man Road, which I had not done since I was a young man, and let me tell you, as a boy riding in the back of a truck, it was a scary ride down that road. When we were going to visit friends or my uncle who lived on the road for a time. The road is still lined with oak and pecan trees, and although there's some new homes in the area, it still has that wild feel. And I couldn't help but get goosebumps at the thought of hearing a howl or seeing a hairy man walk across the road. The story of the hairy man stuck because tales about the hairy man continue to be told in town and around the campfire. Eventually, the story became part of Central Texas lore and has been passed down for many generations. I remember my parents warning me as a child in Round Rock, be home before dark or the woolly booger will get you. In the 19th and early 20th century, reports about the hairy man were mostly by cowboys on the Chisholm Trail who told stories of a figure chasing or watching the herds at night. Early settlers reported livestock being spooked near Brushy Creek and attributed it to the hairy man. Mid-20th century sightings, locals describe a tall, hairy figure crossing the road late at night. Teens claiming to be chased while driving through the area, and it became a popular place to take dates on drives back in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, because you could get your date a little scared and they'd get up close and personal with you. More modern encounters, reports of a large shadowy figure darting across the road in the headlights. Strange screams or whoops are heard in the woods at night. Claims of large footprints found in the mud after rain along the creek. Eyewitness themes always seem to describe it as a tall, hair-covered, and unnerving figure. And it's often tied to the stretch of road still called Hairy Man Road in Round Rock, Texas, but it's not exclusive to there. Now joining me on this episode of Offroad X Files is my friend Bill Gordon. Bill and I are going to discuss Central Texas woolly boogers and an experience he had back in 1977 on their farm that shook him up pretty good. I recorded my discussion with Bill earlier this month, and I'm going to play it for you now. So Beverly had mentioned that you had some information or experiences with the hairy man, woolly booger, Sasquatch, Bigfoot.
Yeah,
goes by so many names.
I know, here in the Round Rock area, there is a road in the west part of Round Rock called Hairy Man Road.
Yep, I know it well. It was pretty scary to drive down at night as a kid in the back of the truck with the trees going over the road and wondering if the hairy man was going to jump out and grab you, but I had no idea that the hairy man was Bigfoot back then.
Yeah, neither did I, but now we know. And, it's, you could call it a phenomenon, you can call it, whatever you want to, however you want to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
In certain parts of Texas, they've had sightings, they've had evidence extraction, such as footprints, hairs, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Called Palmetto State Park.
Yeah.
They've had evidence down there. They've had evidence in South Texas where you wouldn't think, a Sasquatch would go, but there's a lot of food down there.
Exactly.
And they have had sightings, not a lot, but they have had a few. And so, they roam. They traverse, the continent, and I always thought they were kind of picky as to where they went, but evidently not so much, because I think the population of that humanoid, I call it a humanoid, um, I think, has grown, and our population is now interfering with, their homeland, and so and the population be growing to some extent. I think some of the younger ones are venturing out and going places where you might not normally find them.
Right.
They're looking for new territory because it's getting a little crowded where they are
I know that
with their own population.
in the San Diego area, they have the Borrego Sandman out in the desert,
Mm-hmm.
a very light colored Bigfoot. There's
Mm-hmm.
also been a lot of reports from like Border Patrol agents down on the South Texas border having encounters with them in definitely New Mexico, also Arizona. The
Mm-hmm.
is that the not Mahanganila or it starts with an M. I can't think of it, but there's a Bigfoot there as well. That's more
Mm-hmm.
desert based sagebrush. Um,
Yeah.
and if you
And
look
you
at
wouldn't think that,
yeah,
an animal or humanoid, bipedal, you would think something that's anywhere from 7 feet to 12 feet tall, covered with thick hair, wouldn't be in a desert. But the but to that is all that, it's kind of shields you from the sun, I guess. And they're nocturnal for the most part anyway. So they're going to be somewhere in the shade during the day and,
hold up,
be active at night.
yeah,
But here again, I really think that the population, and I have no scientific, evidence of this,
mm-hmm.
but just seeing where all the sightings have been popping up over the last 20 years, it just seems as though there's more sightings in areas that you wouldn't think.
Agree.
And part of that is because there's more people maybe out in those areas,
Mm-hmm.
or it's the fact that some of the younger population of that humanoid is being pushed out because the hunting areas that they would traditionally be are being overpopulated by their species. So they're looking for new ground.
There's also a lot more
But it's very
people
interesting.
out in nature since the pandemic. Like everybody went out and started camping because they didn't want to be
Right.
around people, and then you also have um, the overlanding community and off-roading has grown exponentially since the pandemic. With
Oh yeah,
people
yeah.
venturing further out into the bush in the back
Hmm.
country, and where I'm a trail guide and an ambassador for Onyx Off Road, and I go out and map trails and the research area that I'm in. I've mapped every dirt road out there for people to be able to travel on and have written guides for them. And I do that all
Okay.
over Washington State. So
Hmm.
that enables people to get out and get into these areas where it's, possible for them to have an encounter. Um, but it's really weird because I have a buddy that lives in Tacoma, and there's a park with a big green belt, and he has a long duration recorder that he puts out there, and it's right on the fence line with Joint Base Lewis McChord, so right by the Army and Air Force Base. There's a
Mm.
fence separating. It's within like 20 feet of the fence line for the base, and you wouldn't believe the stuff this guy gets on audio recorder over a period of a month. Tree knocks, growls, something coming up and messing with the recorder. And the recorder, he takes a collapsible, telescopic ladder out there so you can put it 10 or 12 feet up into a tree, and you have something messing with the recorder up there.
Yeah.
And that's more kind of almost urban.
Yeah.
versus like where I saw mine or had my experience, which was, especially the experience I had was 20 miles off of a paved road
Yeah.
near Mount Baker. So, but I think they follow water. In fact, I'm
Oh, yeah.
convinced of it. Anywhere there's water, game, if a bear can survive there, then it could be a Bigfoot habitat as well. And I even
Well,
have,
they eat the same.
yeah,
Their food sources are the same as the bear.
I have out in our research area drone footage that I took about a month ago. In fact, I need to go back and re-review it and take a look at it and then put it out to be analyzed. But I have drone footage from about 20 feet up to, just above the ground where I wouldn't disturb it. Elk crossing the Suwato River, following their tracks, and then following their trackway, they cross another creek, and then feeding into that trackway is a human-like footprint with about a 6-foot stride in between.
Mm-hmm.
Following along the elk herd, and then coming in from above it, following that same track line with the elk herd or black bear tracks. So I've got elk tracks, possible Bigfoot, and bear tracks all converging on the same path.
Yeah. Which to me would be normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, a bear and let's say Bigfoot, they're going to follow water and they're going to follow game.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously where the two converge is going to be the hot spot.
Right.
But, also where they traverse, let's say, some wilderness, they're going to stick close to game trails to go from one area to another.
Right.
And there's a couple of groups that have, I forget their name, but anyway, they have evidence that Bigfoot migrates.
Yeah.
And they have delineated the migratory path of Bigfoot in your area out there.
Yes.
California and Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia, and all that. And that there's a migratory pattern that they have, and they follow that migratory pattern. And if you get in that migratory pattern at certain times of the year, your chances of sightings and evidence finding is going to greatly increase.
Oh yeah.
So they're no different than any other big animal or even humans. They're going to follow the food and the water.
Right.
And that's what they do. But we have migratory paths here in Texas. Our farm happens to be on a major migratory pattern that has been greatly disrupted because of urban sprawl.
Yeah.
But because there's a creek behind our home, and then Brushy Creek is to the south of us on our property, we're in a squeeze point here for a major migratory pattern that comes out of the Texas Hill Country.
Uh-huh.
And, we get mountain lions here on our place, and we're completely surrounded by development.
Right.
We've got 300 and some odd acres here. We're the last farm in the Round Rock area that's, open farmland. It's highly treed and that sort of thing too. But,
Uh-huh.
we're kind of a respite for migratory. I
get what you're saying.
Other animals.
Yeah, it's a
So we
place
get a lot
where they
of
can
lot
take a
of things
break.
Yeah, and they come here. And I've actually had. I can't explain to you what it was, But when I listen to a lot of these stories and the way people have experienced run-ins with Bigfoot, that's what I had.
Uh-huh.
I never saw it, but I had the same uh, mental cues from that. I had the same fight or flight cue from that.
So what happened, Bill?
This was a long time ago. This was, Beverly and I were still living in our trailer. So it had to be in the, probably, I was teaching at the time. So it had to be around 1977, 78.
Uh-huh.
And of course, it wasn't, didn't have the development out here that we did, that we now do,
Right.
obviously. I think the population in Round Rock was about 10,000 people. And, there wasn't anybody on the highway at night,
Right.
zero people at night. And it was dark out here, at night, or,
Oh, yeah.
highly moonlit at night. You could see the stars and all that. So there was actually, a lot of wildlife out here and a lot of, it was country,
So are you east of I-35 going towards like Hutto Taylor?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
We're 3 miles from Hutto, and we're
Okay.
basically 5 miles from Round Rock.
Okay.
I mean, used to be,
Yeah.
now
It's all
we're in the
together.
convergence. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
we're in the convergence zone.
I'm just trying to picture
but-
in my mind exactly where you're I thought that's kind of where you were talking about, but wanted to make sure.
Yeah, our farm is part of our farm is split off from Highway 79.
Okay. It's kind of the same
And,
area the T-landers lived in.
Yeah, we're just
Just down the road.
another mile and a half
Yeah.
down the road from where the T-landers were.
Okay.
Towards Hutto.
We lived on their cotton
And,
farm out on Sunrise Drive.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you know our area.
Yeah,
And you know what it used to be like.
absolutely.
But I had an experience, and here again, I can't say that we're certain that it was Bigfoot
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't see Bigfoot. But if I relate my psychological experience, the way I reacted mentally
Mm-hmm.
to a threat. I'm 6'4" back then, 6'4" and 225 pounds. Okay,
Solid guy.
I wasn't a
Yeah.
small guy.
Yeah.
I have never been scared of anything. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has ever scared me. But by God, in that moment, which was seemed to be about 5 minutes, because I'd parked an old pickup up on the hill, and I'd walked down to the lake, what we call the lake. It's only about an acre and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked below it, and I was checking fence, running the fence.
Mm-hmm.
I did that once a month. And I was down there with a hammer and a few fence steeples in my pocket, and I was walking the fence, and all of a sudden I started getting kind of a funny feeling. And I actually, the hair on my arm started to stand up.
Mm-hmm.
The hair on my neck started to get weird. And I felt like I had a chill, because of the energy. Yeah.
Yeah, the
In a
heebie-jeebies.
very
Yeah.
high degree, extremely high degree. And I started looking around, and I normally carried a pistol on me, which I didn't have on me at the time. And it was back in the truck, which was probably half a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting this really weird feeling. And I had, just to be honest, I had never had that feeling. And I mean, I was really perplexed by it. I wasn't sick. It had nothing to do with, I didn't have a temperature, I hadn't
Right.
eaten anything stupid. Um, I was very well at the time, but I had this sensation. And my mind just kind of got flooded with fear. Um, it was, I would call it an extreme awareness event of doom
Hmm.
and gloom, of danger.
Something was fixing to get you.
Yes. And I'd come in very close contact with bobcats and Mexican wolves and
Hmm.
everything else. That didn't bother me at it, one bit. Never had an issue with that. Never scared me. Even rattlesnakes. I mean, I'd put a stick on them and pick them up.
Yeah.
I was not scared of rattlesnakes. So to have that amount of fear within a matter of 30 seconds was astonishing.
Can
And
I ask you a question?
Yeah,
So, so you're standing there, you get this
yeah,
overwhelming feeling of fear, like you need to either stand your
run,
ground or run. Um,
run. It wasn't stand your
yeah,
ground, it was run.
run, just to run. Did you hear anything around you or see anything as well, or was it just the feeling?
There were your normal animal sounds before that,
Uh huh.
birds chirping, a little bit of rustling going on, armadillo, that sort of thing.
Right.
All of a sudden, there wasn't anything.
The cone of silence.
Cone of silence. There was
Yeah.
no flittering of birds. There wasn't any bird sounds. There weren't any. It was like dead silence. And in that dead silence, the freight train of fear just came upon me.
Uh,
And here again, it was very psychological. It's like, when I think back on it, it was like my brain was being targeted.
mm-hmm.
And then over the past 10 years, reading about Sasquatch and what that particular entity can do, that's it. I mean, that is
Yeah.
what it had to be. And, I want to say this, but I can't guarantee this. But I swear, it wasn't that day that I saw this, but it was like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days later, I just caught a glimpse of something that just kind of in the woods,
Uh huh. Kind of in the corner of
and
your perception.
it's like a shadow moved in a strange way,
Mm-hmm.
in my visual, not my perception, but my line of sight. It's like I noticed something,
Right.
and it was in the woods is fairly dense. I mean, there in this particular area, I could probably see maybe 50 feet to 50. I don't know if maybe up 50 to 75 feet in this one particular area. And there's a great big oak tree in that area and a big pecan tree, It'd take 2 people to reach around the oak tree. And, the pecan tree is probably 80, 70 foot tall, 80
Mm-hmm.
foot tall. Huge old pecan tree. And old growth trees. And that's where I saw this, whatever my perceived perception was of visual sight. That's where I saw this just kind of slip real quick. And it was kind of a dark figure. At least that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I thought back to my issue, a few days before. I thought, could that have been what, startled me? And then it was just, after that, it was just kind of fleeting thought, and I never had that again. Never had that type of intense fear and mental bombardment of that again.
So I think if it were myself standing there in the open feeling that way, I would have taken off running. Did you?
Oh, hell yeah.
Excellent.
I mean,
self-preservation.
I did stand there. I mean,
yeah.
I stood there for maybe 30 seconds. Maybe 30 seconds. Because I was trying to get an awareness of what this was, other than the fear.
Mm-hmm.
I was fighting the fear in my own way.
Yeah.
Mentally. I was fighting the fear, and it's kind of like, this can't be happening,
Gotcha.
This just can't be happening. But it was. And
So,
it was, startling. It was fearful. Mm-hmm. And after that 30 seconds or so, I took off the opposite direction. And I had a sense of where this was coming from.
mm-hmm.
And it was coming from the creek, which was Macknut Creek. And there is a kind of a little cliff over there, and an overhang, and some pretty tall trees over there. And it was kind of like it was, and the creek is below right there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like it was coming from there. I had a sense that was the focus and the direction that it was coming from.
Interesting.
And I mean, it raises the hair on my arms today when I talk about it.
Bet.
That's how intense it was.
Yeah.
And it's still intense when I talk about it to some degree. It kind of brings it back a little bit. But man, that was, I don't wish that on anybody.
Well, it's funny how it stays with you. My encounter was only 2 years ago, June 2023, near Mount Baker. And
okay.
I won't rehash everything that happened, but
yeah,
I was in a rooftop tent. No, I was in a rooftop tent in the pitch dark, and it was walking around my rig. And I could hear it. So it's like if you're parked on gravel and you turn your tires and you hear that crunch.
Yeah, you hear that crunch.
Exactly. It sounded just like that, but it was bipedal walking, circling around my rig, and then it pulls the fabric of the tent, the annex, and kind of stretches it. And I gasped.
Mm-hmm.
And when I guess when I gasped, it heard me and it took off. So I never saw it, but I definitely was very, very aware that there was something there that was humongous. And I didn't know if it was going to come in the tent and get me or not. So I totally get the fear that you felt. And I really think, every time you talk about it, it kind of helps. It's therapeutic. But let me ask you a couple questions. So thinking back to that period of time, Bill,
mm-hmm.
do you remember preceding that anything strange happening? Did you have livestock, chickens, goats, anything come up missing, hear tree knocks, anything that would indicate that something large was in the area?
Beverly and I had, for about, I don't know, it was like a couple of years, we had some knocks on the exterior of the house in the middle of the night.
The old hand slaps.
And Could have been that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like it's loud enough to wake you up, And it's like, oh crap, what was that? And of course, I'd throw a porch light on, run outside with a gun, and never see anything. Never saw any footprints or anything, which is typical of Sasquatch because they knock, and you don't see footprints that much because of the way that the pressure of the foot is on the ground. You just don't see much, especially here in Texas with dry ground and that sort of thing. You're just not going to see much,
It's a pretty common tactic.
That was pretty strange, huh?
It's a pretty common tactic. Whenever a property, and they call it habituation, where you're living on a property and you're kind of coexisting with them, and I think they have a sense of humor, and they like.
Oh, they do. They're very curious, and they're very extremely intelligent.
Yeah. And so they'll run by your house and they'll slap it to get your attention, but they don't want you to catch them either, so they run off.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like letting you know, hey, I'm still here.
Yeah. Yep.
I've wondered what I would do if one ran by my rig in the middle of the night and slapped. I have a hard shell for my rooftop tent. If one of them ran by and slapped that, and I'm sure I'd probably mess myself.
Yeah.
Or have one peeking in the window.
Well, that would be interesting, which has happened on many occasions.
Yeah.
That's happened. But I don't know, it's hard to say what the reaction would be. I mean, mine is grab a gun and run outside because to me it's like, well, I got some idiot, trying to do something stupid.
Right.
I don't associate it with a Bigfoot. If I knew it was a Bigfoot.
Have you tried gifting there on your property, or have you had
No, the only thing I gift now is some bunch of damn kids. No, I don't think there's a Sasquatch that would come within 100 miles here now, because of all that.
The sprawl.
All that magic is gone from here, except for the animals. We have animals here, but we don't have the disturbances that we used to have with, something that might be like that.
Yeah.
We don't have that anymore. They're skirting this area.
So besides the house slaps, did anything else ever happen? Did you have any sightings or anything else you could attribute to possible Sasquatch?
No.
Okay.
Just that one kind of a strange, almost ghostly, dark, whatever, slipping past real quick. It's 50, 75 feet away, extremely fast. Just like darting, it was behind a tree and it darted in behind some other trees and brush, only maybe 8 feet away. So quick, so silent. And
incredible.
The wind was blowing through the trees, up high, not down below. It was dead still, but a lot of rustling, in the trees up high. And I wouldn't have been able to hear any noise from if he created noise.
Right.
I wouldn't have been able to hear it. But I did see that flash. And that always kind of didn't bother me, but it really piqued my interest,
I bet.
And I never saw any footprints, never saw prints, because everything around here mainly is,
rock.
Kind of
rock, hard dirt,
and thin soil. If you do have soil where I had seen all this, it wasn't deep enough to make a print. And you got a lot of decayed leaf matter and stuff like that, and it doesn't leave a print,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was my experience. But here again, it's just exactly like some of these experiences that people talk about. And just, I mean, there's no difference at all. It's exactly the way that was. And so I really think it was probably a Sasquatch. I don't know if it was a big one or a young one or what, but it had to be going across country. Maybe it was going to South Texas. I don't know where it was going, but I do think it was on our property. And I think that it could have been around coming in and out for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Because we had those strange knocks on the house, and I had no idea what that could have been back then, except 10 years ago, I started thinking about Sasquatch.
Well, I know that the railroad track isn't too far from there, but I doubt a hobo would come up and slap your house and get shot.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah,
no.
Exactly.
No. And people know how quick I was with a weapon. They wouldn't dare do that.
Oh, yeah.
They get shot.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, that, matter of fact, I was kind of known for that sort of thing. So they didn't mess with me. They wouldn't do that. So it had to be something that obviously had no fear of me.
Right.
And was kind of playing with us, I guess,
I want to thank Bill for coming on Offroad X Files and sharing his thoughts and experiences about the Central Texas woolly booger. And now back to our story. From the dusty cattle drives of the Chisholm Trail to the headlights of modern Round Rock, the legend of the Hairy Man has endured and has now become an annual festival. Whether he was a boy abandoned to the wilderness, an outlaw who vanished into the trees, or a creature that defies explanation, the stories remain. On Hairy Man Road, shadows still move where no one should be. Footsteps echo in the brush when the night grows quiet, and some say if you listen closely, you can still hear the cries of the Hairy Man drifting through the oaks and pecan trees. Is it folklore, a feral survivor, or a flesh-and-blood cryptid that continues to walk among us? That answer for now remains hidden in the starry Texas night. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. If you've had an encounter with the Hairy Man or any other explained occurrence that finds you off the beaten path, I want to hear from you. Email me at jimmy@offroadxfiles.com. Your story might just be the next file we open. Until next time, remember, where the trail meets the unknown, the Offroad X Files begin.